Hey, welcome in to the weekend recap presented by TrueSun Exteriors and Interiors here on PowerMizzou.com on the 2021 version of Black Monday in college football with every player in America essentially being a free agent. We're going to talk some about that in a little bit. We'll bring Mitchell Forde in here in just a minute, but rebuilding projects and reclamation projects going to be center stage here in college football over the next few weeks, even at Missouri, yes, but not just at Missouri. Plenty of places like, say, Norman, Oklahoma, maybe L.A., places like that. We'll talk about everything in college football. Oh, by the way, Missouri played a football game last weekend. The regular season is over. We're going to talk about all that. But if all you're looking to rebuild is your home or remodel, hey, you might actually be in better position than if you were a college football coach today, other than the fact that they probably have more money to do it than you do. But that's why you need to call the people at TrueSun Exteriors and Interiors. They are going to give you definitely competitive rates and do the best by your pocketbook that they can. If you need anything done around your house, whether it is a total remodel or maybe just a minor project you've got, they're the guys you call. You get a hold of them at 442-7292 in Columbia, Missouri. Let me double check that I didn't reverse that number. I didn't. I got it right. 573-442-7292. TrueSunExterior.com on the internet. They are going to take care of anything you need. They will do it as quickly as they can, and don't waste time. Get in touch with them, get on the books, because I know that those guys are busy all year round, and so you want to get things started as quickly as possible, just the way, Mitch, that college football players want to get things done as quickly as possible. I mean, I've seen a lot of people say, I don't get it, why transfer now, 2 weeks before a bowl game or whatever, and the answer is real simple. If you know you're transferring, you want to get in that transfer portal as soon as you can and start having other coaches be able to contact you and find out the place you're going to go.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, the transfer portal is going to be a very crowded place this offseason. The root cause is mainly the NCAA giving everyone a free year last year and then trying to go back to the 85 scholarship limit this year. So a lot of places like Missouri, in order to sign a full signing class, have to move some people out who technically have eligibility remaining, whether that's guys who would have been seniors or not. So, yeah, I think it's smart if you know you're going to transfer to go ahead and get out there and try to claim a spot because they will be limited.
And I was talking with somebody this morning, and I just said, I don't think it's possible for the NCAA to have wrecked this any more than it has. So I think the important thing, and we'll get into the Missouri specific stuff, but a bunch of new rules passed by the NCAA. The one that I think is causing fans the most confusion right now is the ability to replace up to 7 transfers in your recruiting class, which means that theoretically you can sign 32 players. Now, there's a couple caveats here. You still can't have more than 85 guys on scholarship at one time. So to be able to sign 32, you can only have 53 that are coming back. Missouri right now is scheduled to have, I think, 70 that are coming back. Now, some of those guys won't come back, but in order to fill a class, Missouri would still need to have 17 more players transfer out, which seems unlikely. But here's the other thing I think fans don't understand about that. That rule about replacing up to 7 transfers, those are only kids that transfer after December 15th. In other words, after the early signing period has begun, after the semester is over. So kids that are transferring today, Missouri theoretically can't really even replace that scholarship. That's just, hey, it's gone, and now again, they don't have room to, so it's no big deal. But I know for a fact, because I've talked to some people at other schools, there are kids that are being asked, hey, we know you're going to transfer, but could you maybe wait to announce it until December 15th? Because that way we actually can replace you. Whereas if you transfer on December 10th or today, November 29th, you can't theoretically be replaced. I mean, the end result is we don't know what year of eligibility anybody is. We don't know who's coming back. We don't know who's not coming back. And we don't know how many spots anybody in America has.
Yeah, pretty much. And, I mean, it's going to create a tough situation for a lot of these kids, too, because like I said before, every team in America most have a similar problem to Missouri, where if they want to sign a full signing class, they have to have some kids who have eligibility left either just stop playing football or transfer. And so there's going to be way more kids wanting to play than there are going to be spots available. I mean, basically, you're roughly probably now about 4.5 classes worth of players for 4 classes worth of spots now that we're back to the 85 scholarship limit, assuming, about half the people who had the extra year of eligibility who could be some super seniors next year want to play college football somewhere. So, yeah, it's going to be a mess. And, yeah, there's a lot of issues, but I think one of the biggest ones is that there's just not going to be a lot of spots for kids, and they're going to be, like you said, told to wait to transfer. And I've seen some fans, some blowback from fans today about all the transfers. Like, this is going to happen everywhere. Maybe not to the exact degree it's happening at Missouri. Some places more, some places less. But this is just kind of the reality of the situation right now.
And no kid should suffer any blowback for transferring, because you know what's happening on the other side? Lincoln Riley is bolting for USC like 2 weeks before. And whatever, Lincoln Riley can do whatever's good for him. But he's doing what's good for him, so why shouldn't Spencer Rattler or Caleb Williams or any other kid on that roster do what is good for them? There should be no blowback on kids. This is not their fault that this situation has been created. It has. So we're not even talking about kids that transferred out of Missouri during the season, and there were a few of them. But just today, it has been Daniel Parker Jr., Chris Sheeran, Ishmael Burdine, and there's a fourth one that I can't even remember.
Messiah Swinson.
Messiah Swinson, right. So 4 guys have left. Now, before we get into each of those kids' situations, what that does, by my numbers, and again, I'm not going to promise they're right, but by my numbers, that puts Missouri at 85 scholarship players as of today. So that means every kid that they get a commitment from between now and next August 1st means somebody has to leave. And there are going to be people leaving. Like, that 85 number still includes Tyler Beatty. He's not coming back. We know that, but we don't officially know it. So he's still on the 85 for right now. But that's the situation with those kids. So let's just, without going too deep into it, I don't know. None of these come as a huge surprise. The biggest quote-unquote surprise, I guess, would be Daniel Parker Jr., but Mitch, he's literally tweeting cryptic things from the locker room at Georgia. Anybody that's surprised about this has paid no attention.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of it's a tricky thing to kind of, evaluate, because one, he played quite a bit over the course of 4 years. And, I don't want anyone to bash him. Like, I've seen some of that, like the kid gave you 4 years, which is what you expect from a college football player. He went through his senior day. He's going to graduate, I assume. He should be, or at least close to that. And he actually, he played through a lot. He had the eye deal, almost lost his eye, almost saw his career end, had concussion issues last year. At the same time, I think it was clear that maybe the fit wasn't perfect between him and the new staff. There may have been a little friction. He may not have been the easiest person in the world to deal with. And, at the end of the day, cryptic tweets or not, I think it just might be one of those things where it's like, the staff just kind of plan. You have to plan at a certain point on a certain number of guys who were seniors to go ahead and move on. And so if he had interest in doing that, I don't think they were going to necessarily beg him to stay. I mean, it's kind of like we talked about last year with Mark Smith in basketball. Everyone was so surprised he's transferred. Well, the staff knew he was leaving, or planned on him leaving, and was bringing in people to fill his spot. Now, again, this isn't maybe a perfect analogy because that's not going super great right now. But if he wanted, I think even if he wanted to come back, in Mark Smith's case, I don't know that he was necessarily that was an option. And that might have been for Daniel Parker. I don't know that. But I think it's just one of those things where it's no one in the football building is either, I don't think, caught off guard or distraught about this news.
And I think you've got to understand two things when it comes to transfers. So I think there are 2 mistakes that fans make in this. Number one is they think too often that the players and coaches have the same devotion to their school and their team that fans do, and they just don't. It is a place to play football. It is a place to get a paycheck. Now, that does not mean that kids don't develop an affinity for the school and their teammates. And that doesn't mean there aren't kids who grow up saying, man, if I just get a Missouri offer or a Nebraska offer, or a Penn State offer or whatever, that's where I'm going because that's where I've always wanted to go. There are kids like that. For most of them, This was the place that they thought, hey, this is my best chance to play football, which is what I want to do. And if they run into a situation where they find a better place to play football, they're going to do that. It's not this lifelong devotion to Missouri or Kansas State or Texas or something like that. The second mistake is way too often with kids, we just look at, well, it's about playing time. Well, Daniel Parker Jr. started almost every game. It's quite obviously not all about playing time. And guess what? There's a lot of things that happen outside of the 3 hours or 4 hours for 12 Saturdays a year that none of us are privy to and really have any idea about.
Right. Yeah. And I'd say another misconception is just every time it's like, oh, this kid thinks the grass is greener somewhere else. Like some of these kids who are leaving every team right now, but Mizzou included, like the coaching staff needed them to leave. Like it just is a fact of the situation. And that's why this immediate eligibility, one-time immediate eligibility thing is a good thing, because it's not always up to the kids.
Right. And that's why I think some of this now, this is why I think the one-time transfer rule needed to pass, and the name, image, and likeness, and some of this money, because now I don't really feel bad if a coach tells a kid, yo, you're never going to play here, man. Like, we need the scholarship. You should probably go somewhere else. That's more okay now than it used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right.
Yeah, go ahead and fill some time. I've got a hacking cough for the last 3 days. I'm pretty sure I don't have COVID, but.
Okay. Well, yeah. I don't know. I mean, now, the thing we look at now is the tight end situation obviously is a little more barren. Nico Hay will play a lot in the bowl game, I'm sure. I would guess Ryan Hurstcamp will play quite a bit. He played, I think it was like 19 snaps or something against Arkansas. He can still play in one more game and preserve his red shirt, so that's a good thing. I'll be curious to see if they bring in a transfer over the offseason at tight end. I don't think you necessarily have to, especially if you think Hurstcamp can come in and feel kind of like the Daniel Parker role next season, play alongside Nico Hay. But I also think that if they find someone they like, or maybe they don't feel Hurstcamp is quite ready to do that as a redshirt freshman, it wouldn't stun me. Corner, like, Burdine and Sheeran, I don't think that's a huge shock to anyone. I mean, Burdine did start a few games before he got hurt. Sheeran really never played all that much. You are going to have a situation where you're probably only going to have one upperclassman next year in Ennis Rakestraw. But I also think that, they've got, I think they have enough bodies at corner, and you would hope that, that they brought in a bunch of guys in that class, in the 2021 class, that were fairly highly rated. You would think one or two of them should be able to step up and play regular time.
Yeah, I mean, DJ Jackson played a lot the last 2 weeks. Snoop Reeves got hurt in spring football. He's going to be eligible next year. Dalen Carnell is going to be eligible. Davion Sistronk, redshirted this year. He's going to play. Like, there are guys there. And, I mean, look, you're not trying to speak ill of any of these 4 kids that have left so far, but the vast majority of kids who transfer out are going to be a very similar profile where you go, yeah, they might have played some next year, but, like, they're not the difference between 6-6 and 7-5 or 7-5 and 8-4 or whatever. I mean, you don't start being concerned about transfers until you get to a point where you go, oh, hang on, that's like a guy he just signed last year, or that's a guy who actually played a lot and was going to play a lot more next year. Then you might start to go, hang on, what's happening here? But as long as we're just talking about guys that, 10 snaps a game or whatever, and you didn't really see them as necessarily difference makers in the next year or two, it's just the cost of doing business.
Yep, I would agree.
I think we've covered most of the transfer news. Who knows? Honestly, there could have been more. Like, twice today, I've updated the scholarship chart and said, okay, I'm going to go do something, and then another kid transfers. So another kid might transfer while we're doing this show. We'll get to it. Bradley Heath says, how many total transfers out should we expect? And, again, I think the number is probably somewhere between 10 and 15 total. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, so I mean, some people, it may not be transfer. Like it might just be someone like Tyler Beatty is going to declare for the NFL draft. Caleb Evans is going to declare for the NFL draft. Someone like, I don't know, like I'm not trying to say this is the case, but like Mike Wilson's done with eligibility. Barrett Bannister or something, he could just be like, yeah, I'm done with football. I'm going to go be a GA and try to be a coach or something. Like, so yeah, I think it's something like, like 15 to 17-ish total, including the 4 guys from today who have eligibility left who stop playing, but I don't think they'll all be transfers. Yeah,
and the kids who are talking about the COVID year are a little bit different than underclassmen, because if you're talking about the COVID year, that also has to come from the staff. And just to use Barrett Bannister as your example, not only does he have to say, I want to come back, but the staff has to say, we're extending you the scholarship for next year and you can come back.
Right.
They very easily, and I'm not saying they would do this with Bannister, but could say, hey, we appreciate everything you've done here for 5 years, but we need the scholarship, so that spot isn't there. They technically can't really do that with an underclassman. Like, say, just to pick a name, say B.J. Harris were to say, hey, I want to come back next year, which by all indications, he's going to come back. The staff is not, they don't have that same flexibility to say, no, you can't come back. Now,
right.
There are ways that does happen sometimes with kids, but theoretically, that's the difference between a kid who's looking at a sixth year and a kid who's just looking to come back in normal times. Okay, so Josh wants to know how important is the transfer recruiting cycle to Drinkwitz, and there's two ways to look at this. I very much, yes, they need some transfers, right? I think they need a transfer linebacker, to be honest. There are other places where running back, tight end, depending on what happens, maybe quarterback, you could see them needing one. But for the most part, if you are going out and getting kids from the transfer portal and thinking that's the main difference in us being good and not good next year, then I think you're in trouble. I mean, the biggest part of the improvement from next year has to come from this 2021 class and all that.
Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's important to try to get a difference maker or two, and that could be the difference in, maybe 6 wins and 7 wins or 7 wins and 8 wins. If you're able to go out and get 1 or 2 guys who are able to be really productive, not even saying it has to be Wan'Dale Robinson, although that's, the example that leaps to mind, but someone who can come in and start and play an important role for you, that at a couple spots, plug a couple holes, that would be big. But I don't think it's, I don't think it's nearly as important as developing those guys he has recruited and showing that his high school recruiting, which has gotten all that publicity and all that buzz, is as good as it, as the stars say it is. I think that we're starting to reach the point where the holes need to be filled internally, by guys he recruited and developed.
Yeah, no question. And there still usually has to be some sort of a connection there, right? If Spencer Rattler were to enter the portal, which I think he's going to, he did. Okay. Is it possible Missouri could get him? Sure, I guess it's possible, but there's really nothing to indicate that, a lot of these kids have a pretty decent idea because they've got a connection with somebody at another school or on another staff. And so I just don't think it's quite as simple as let's pick every kid who enters the portal and call him. You only have so many hours in the day. The coaches are also, by the way, out doing in-home visits and stuff this week. So it's not quite that simple. Mr. Wonderful, I'm glad to see him watching the show, wants to know, what is the end date for a player who wants to transfer? Is it August 1st, 2022? It's basically the start of fall camp next year. So you're going to see a wave from now till December 15th. You are going to see another wave after bowl games. I imagine there are some kids who are going to transfer from Missouri, but they're going, hey, man, I'll take a free trip to Memphis or Houston or Tampa or whatever, get my bowl gifts, hang out with my buddies. It's worth 2 weeks of practice for me, so I'm going to do that, but then I'm going to transfer before I come back in January. And then there's another wave of kids who think, I'm going to win a starting job, and I'm going to do that in spring football. And they're going to come back in spring football, and they're going to find out they didn't win a starting job, and then they're going to transfer in April. So it really is 3 waves. And, yeah, the truth is there's not a college coach in the country who's going to know what his roster looks like until probably about mid-July next year.
Yeah, so players can transfer anytime. I do think there is a deadline to when players can transfer and have immediate eligibility, and I want to say it's May 1st. I'm actually not 100% sure. I think it was August 1st last year because the rule got implemented a little late. So I think we should have a decent amount of clarity, by mid-May, late May, as those guys who have transferred, like you said, after spring football, all kind of find homes. And then players can still transfer after that. They just have to know they're sitting out a year.
I didn't anticipate spending, the first 20 minutes all on the transfer stuff, but it is kind of the news of the day. Oh, by the way, Missouri played a football game last Friday. It was fine. I don't know.
I don't think many people watching think it was that fine.
I think Arkansas people thought it was fine. But fine is the way. The regular season's none, and fine is the word I use to describe the season. wasn't great. It wasn't awful. There were times that you thought it was going to be better, and there were times you certainly thought it was going to be worse. In the end, it was just fine. I don't really view it as a step forward or a step back. They just kind of stood in place.
Yeah, 500, 6-6 kind of speaks for itself, right? I mean, coach was 500 last year, team was 500 last year, 500 this year. Like you said, it's definitely not a disaster that hurts momentum or anything like that, or puts Eli Drinkwitz on the hot seat, which, it looked like it could trend towards that way, at least at points this season. But it's also not some big step forward, and I don't think that's necessarily cause for alarm or anything. Like, as Drinkwitz has said many times, progress isn't linear. I think the big thing now is just you have this huge unanswered question that is the quarterback position that's going to loom over this team all offseason. And I'm very fascinated to see how that gets answered. And I don't know what the right answer is, but I just know that Eli Drinkwitz needs to get it right.
Yeah, and I also think this is now every single discussion you have about Missouri football is framed by, well, none of it matters because the quarterback situation's a train wreck or whatever. There's 22 dudes on that field. It's not just about that one player. That is the most important position, and I understand, but I truly don't know what to expect. And I said this on the postgame show on Saturday. I said, look, I understand why somebody would think Eli Drinkwitz is nuts, thinking Connor Bazelak's the best option he had on his roster. I understand why you'd think that, having watched these games. But right now, the best alternative is actually that the fans are right and that Eli's been totally wrong. Because if he's right, that this is their best option right now, that's terrifying going into spring football.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's really the past few games, they can be alarming for several reasons. And I think, most people would say Eli Drinkwitz is just too stubborn or whatever. I don't know if that's true, but yeah, that would probably be the best case scenario, because the other scenarios are that, like you said, there's no backup who is, who is good enough to play or to be better than this version of Connor Bazelak who we've seen the past few weeks, which is very scary because Drinkwitz is the quarterback's coach. He should have known that going into the season and probably addressed it. And B, how are you going to then try to address it before this coming season? You're in a little bit of a delicate spot because you could take a transfer, but you got to understand that that's going to cause other people to leave the room. And, they're certainly, at least they want to they need to hope they at least bring back one of the guys in the room right now, because you can't just have a transfer in Sam Horn. Again, you can't try to get through the season with one guy. Or also, the other thing is do you risk it? Do you say Connor Bazelak can be better, can be the guy we saw him be early in his career, and his regression was just due to the injuries and the lack of confidence? Or maybe it's just that defenses have kind of figured him out and he's physically just not kind of able to make him pay and make him, play different coverages than they've been playing. And that has kind of sapped his confidence. We've seen it plenty of times. Guys get off to fast starts in college and just never get back to that point. I mean, who was that, that quarterback at South Carolina a couple of years ago, that 5-star kid, Helinski? Everyone was talking about, he was going to be the next big thing in the SEC. He got replaced the next year and then transferred to some group of 5 team. So that, it is risky either way to bring in a transfer or to rely on Bazelak. And, like I said, I truly don't know what the right answer is. I know that I think a lot of people, watching will say that the answer is anyone but Bazelak, but that's not a guarantee to work either.
So 2 things there. First of all, if they bring in a transfer, to me, it absolutely 100% has to be a grad transfer. It is a guy who's here for 1 year and that's it. Because I think you could sell Tyler Macon and Sam Horn on, hey, you need a year. You're not ready to go out and start. Stick with us. But if you bring in a guy who's got multiple years of eligibility, if I'm one of those guys, I'm going, hold on. This is not what I signed up for. What are you doing here? So it is, if they go the transfer route, and I don't know that they will, but if they do, it 100% has to be a grad transfer. But here's what I'm more interested in, and I know you don't know, I don't know. I'm not sure Eli Drinkwitz knows, and I'm not sure Connor Bazelak knows. But can he be fixed? I see a kid who's I fully believe there are injuries going on we don't know about and may never know about, and that's fine. That's their prerogative. I think you're doing a kid a little bit of a disservice by saying he's healthy when he's clearly not. But more than the physical stuff, I just see a kid who is in a really bad place confidence-wise and belief-wise and sometimes that gets fixed and sometimes it doesn't. I don't know. Maybe that can all get fixed, but it almost hit a point Saturday, Mitch, where I thought it was kind of unfair to the kid to keep sending him out there.
Yeah, it was bad. And yeah, like you said, I don't know if anyone knows whether he can be fixed, and that's the question that Eli Drinkwitz has to answer and has to probably get right. Because if you stick with Bazelak and I mean, really, I think that there's maybe no quicker way to lose some of his mojo and his good standing with the fan base than to roll out Bazelak out there again next season to start and have the same type of stuff happen. It would not be good to bring in a transfer and have it not work, but like if you're going to roll with Bazelak, you got to feel really confident, I think, about having it work out the way, or if you're opening it up to a competition and you feel like you have another guy who also, maybe it's Brady Cook, maybe it's Tyler Macon, who also can at least get you back to the point of Connor Bazelak was earlier this season. Because yeah, it's hard because like on one hand we've seen him be way better than he was towards the end of this season. On the other, there's no guarantee that he gets back to that point, and like I don't know, I don't know what the right answer is.
Right. I don't think anybody does, and guess what? We don't get paid $4 million to know it. Another question, do we need another coach to help us on offense? I mean, I don't actually think that's the worst idea in the world, right, to have an offensive coordinator, because, like, Andy Reid has an offensive coordinator. He calls the plays, but he has an offensive coordinator to handle the day-to-day stuff. A lot of these guys do. But the issue with that is, if you bring in another coach, like there has to be a coach somewhere that leaves. Like you're at the capacity right now, so you can't just say, okay, Eli's given up offensive coordinator and he's bringing in an OC. That's cool, but somebody's got to go if that happens, and I don't know that that's going to happen.
Right, who are you getting rid of is the question. The logical place would be like somewhere in the secondary, but I think they really like Charlie Harbison and Aaron Fletcher. Like I don't know, maybe if one of them leaves for another job, I think it's unlikely. I think that Eli Drinkwitz constructed his staff the way he did for a reason, and like maybe it would help, but like I kind of tend to doubt that. Having someone else come in and kind of do the same stuff Drinkwitz. Like, I don't know if it's a bad idea. Like you said, other people do it, but I have a hard time seeing that being the magic bullet that all of a sudden turns things around.
Yeah. We'll get to basketball here briefly at the end of the show in a minute, but just real quick, the bowl scenario, there's 13 SEC teams that are bowl eligible, and low-key, the worst thing that happened to Missouri over the weekend was LSU beating Texas A&M, because Texas A&M now is not going to a New Year's Six bowl. I wouldn't think. I don't think Kentucky is like a New Year's Six bowl team. I mean, 9-3. I don't know. So the upshot is whether Bama's in the playoff or not. I think between the playoff and the New Year's Six, there's only 3 SEC teams, which means you get to that pool of 6, and those get filled, and that's 9 SEC teams. So you've still got potentially 4 SEC teams looking for a bowl spot. And, I mean, they're all going to get one, but 2 of them may very well be like the Quick Lane Bowl or the Diamond Walnut Bowl, or these games against just like – seriously, against like San Jose State. And that would be worst-case scenario to me for Missouri, because – if you win, yeah, you went 7-6, but nobody cares. But if you lose, you lost to a terrible team that nobody's ever heard of, and you have a losing record.
Yeah, I mean, basically, we're at the point where there's no way to even speculate on the bowl bid, because once you get to the point where an SEC team could be sent to one of the bowls without an SEC tie, it's like that. It's truly a dart throw. And like, let's be honest, like, yeah, maybe it won't be Mizzou, but I have a hard time seeing Mizzou not being towards the bottom of the pecking order after going 6-6. And the attendance, like we mentioned last time, does play a little bit of a factor. It's Missouri. The name brand is not as strong as some of these other schools. Like, it would not surprise me at all if they're one of the ones sent to a non-SEC tie bowl, whether it's, I don't even know what the options are, independence or elsewhere. So like, I don't even have a guess until we get some clarity on that situation. My only prediction is that most fans will decide to be angry about it.
Yeah. I mean, everything, like, this was a great college football weekend, man. Everything got shaken up. Just outside of Mizzou, what was your biggest, oh my God, how did that happen thing this weekend?
There was a lot. I was like you, I think, where I actually got a chance to just relax on a Saturday and watch a bunch of college football, which never happens. So that was really nice. All 3 of the big rivalry games kind of had one of those moments. Like the Michigan-Ohio State game was actually the least suspenseful, but it was probably the most surprising, where Michigan just dominated Ohio State in the trenches. The Alabama comeback was surprising, but also like as soon as that Auburn running back went out of bounds, I was like, oh boy, oh no, they left the door open. Alabama's going to figure it out. And Brian Harsin should have gone for 2 like Eli Drinkwitz. And then Bedlam was great. I thought Oklahoma State, after they had the worst third quarter I've ever seen. They gave up a safety and then the muff punt for a touchdown and missed a field goal, and yet they still managed to find a way to win. So it was great. I loved all 3 games.
The best moment of the college football weekend was clearly Kerry Murdoch, he's the publisher at our Oklahoma site, starting to ask Lincoln Riley about job rumors, and Lincoln Riley cuts him off before he can even finish the question with, "I'm not going to be the next coach at LSU." 100%, he wasn't, and that is master PR by Lincoln Riley, because I don't know what Kerry was planning to ask him, but when he says, "I'm not going to be the next coach at LSU," it doesn't cross anybody's mind to say, "But are you still going to be the coach at Oklahoma?"
Right.
Because, nobody can say that Riley lied. This is not Roy Williams saying he doesn't give a shit about North Carolina and then going to North Carolina. That Lincoln told the truth, kind of.
Yeah, that was amazing.
And he really should teach a marketing class at USC for next, because I'm sure he will need a little extra money from his $39 billion salary that he's going to get out there or whatever. So look, I love the coaching carousel, especially when we don't have to really pay attention to it. You never say 100%, right? But I'm pretty confident Eli Drinkwitz his name's not going to come up and he's not going to go anywhere. So we can just kind of sit back and watch this with all the fans. Real quick comment from Grayson Heck. He said earlier, "I know we're not on the topic. We are now. But if Mizzou loses to Paul Quinn tonight, I am moving to Madagascar and never seeing the outside world again." Look, if your plan is to not see the outside world, why would you spend money to move to Madagascar? Just shut yourself in the house you have right now, and it doesn't cost you any money. If I was going to Madagascar, I would want to see the outside and see what that looks like. Larger point, that I refuse to even discuss the idea that Missouri could lose to a guy named Paul Quinn. That's not happening.
That guy he'd have to be really good. He'd have to be even better than Kyle O'Quinn, who did once beat Mizzou almost single-handedly. I don't know. It's an NAIA school. Mizzou can't lose. It can't be close. I refuse to believe otherwise. If it is, there's no hyperbole that's really enough. It's an absolute train wreck disaster.
If Paul Quinn beats Missouri tonight, seriously, I'm okay if Konzo doesn't have a job when he gets back to the locker room. That's cool. That makes sense. It's not going to happen.
I know you're really fired up to watch that game.
In person, no less. Yeah. But just real quick on basketball, you've got this game. You've got the Thursday game at Liberty, which at one point I thought Missouri probably would lose. They shouldn't lose that game. Liberty sucks. They're 2-3. They're not any good. And then they come back home for Eastern Illinois, and unless Eastern Illinois stops in Forestville for some tacos on the way, they shouldn't beat. So theoretically, I think Missouri should be 6-3. Worst case, they're 5-4, but whatever. But the problem is we've got 2 full weeks of games that everybody just goes, well, I don't care. Then starting on December 11th is the next time you care, and that's at KU. And every game from there on out is against a Power 5 team, and that's when there need to start being some games that this fan base needs something to say, hey, here's any reason you should care at all going forward.
Yeah, it would definitely be great, and not that I'm necessarily saying this is going to happen, but it'd be great if they could at least play Kansas and Illinois close, or somehow find a way to win one of those games or something. Because there's going to be as much as people are down on the team right now, a lot of people will watch those games, especially the Kansas game, and a lot of people will watch this team for the first time in those games, especially the Kansas game. So if they could show something, I think it would certainly it would help. I'm not counting on it. I think I've just resigned myself to a slog of a season.
Yeah, so signing day, 16 days away. The transfer news in and out, certainly not over. There will be a bowl announcement next Saturday. All last week, Mitch, I was just telling myself, just get through this week, man. Let's just get through this week. And now all of a sudden I'm like, hang on, now we got to get through the next week.
Yeah, it's a busy period. It's a busy time. Bull practices, like you said, bull selection, signing period. So we'll have it all covered, and then we will enjoy getting a few days off for Christmas, hopefully, unless we're covering the Quick Lane Bowl in Detroit.
I don't know what this wee business is, but I will not be covering the Quick Lane Bowl in Detroit. So, all right, Mitch, we will catch up later on, man. Appreciate it.
Sounds good.
All right, guys. Appreciate everybody who was hanging out with us and joined us and made comments and did all that. While you're here, do me a favor, hit the like button on the show, subscribe to the channel, tell people about what we're doing. It all helps out. If you're listening on the podcast, which I'm going to put up here in just a few minutes when we finish, do the same things there. Leave a nice review, leave a nice comment, share it on social media, tell people about what we're doing. We're not streaming every day of the week now that the season's over. We are doing this show on Monday. We're doing the 573 report on Wednesdays, and Sean Williams and I will still do the recruiting show on Tuesdays. So Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we're here with you guys during the week. That will obviously change a little bit come 2 weeks from now when we have signing day. But we will still be here with you guys through at least signing day on those shows for the next 3 weeks. And obviously, hey, I want to say 3 of the 4 transfers today. We were the first to report, so we've got the scholarship situation. Basically, if you want to know what's going on, go to powermizzou.com. If you're somehow watching this show and you don't subscribe, we've got a deal going on right now. If you sign up for a year subscription, it's only going to cost you $20.21. That is 79% and change off of a regular subscription. So if you guys go, just sign up for a year. I mean, especially with signing day coming up, we're going to give you stuff on the message boards on the site that you just don't get anywhere else. And, you know, if that sounds arrogant, then I guess I would kind of apologize, but it's also true. So come join us there. Appreciate Mitch spending some time with us. And before we get out, also appreciate True Sun Exteriors and Interiors. They have been with us all year as the presenting sponsor on this show. A lot of engagement on Mondays, kind of wrapping up what's happened over the previous weekend. Next week, we'll be wrapping up some official visits and some in-home visits and all kinds of things. Probably some more transfer news. Definitely a bowl bid and an opponent and all that. So plenty to do here the next couple weeks on Mondays, and True Sun Exterior always has plenty to do. I mean, guys, trust me, I have booked things with them. It takes a few weeks to get in, sometimes a few months. So if you've got something that you know is coming up, don't call True Sun Exteriors on December 10th and think, hey, they can come out on December 15th. Like, it doesn't work that way. You're going to have to get in early. So if you know you've got a project coming up in your home, you need to go to TrueSunExteriors.com or you need to call them at 573-442-7292. They are voted the best in the business in Columbia, Missouri in the home improvement category. I can personally vouch for them. I would absolutely never use another company to do something around my house. So you get in touch with those guys. Barry and his team are phenomenal at what they do. Appreciate them being great partners with us, and hopefully we can help them out a little bit. If you do book something with True Sun, just let them know, hey, that you heard about it here on PowerMizzou.com, and we would greatly appreciate that so that they know that their time and money spent here has been worth it. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Tomorrow at noon, Sean Williams is going to join me for the recruiting show, and I'm sure we're not done with news for the day. We'll talk more about it on the message boards. Thanks, guys. See you later.